The defendant is facing the possibility of life in prison. It's the court's duty to ensure his appearance. The bond will be $1 million anyway.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a courtroom. You will conduct yourselves at all times appropriately. The next PSC date is August 19th at 9 a.m.
We have been told that the wearing of body cams by police officers will leave no doubt as to what happened and why. It will leave no question as to where fault lies. And it will force both law enforcement and citizen to act accordingly. But what we're watching unfold in Cincinnati leaves still a lot of questions, and in the end may prove that video is not always the final answer to proper policing in America. Let's get to it, and let's go ahead and head round the dial. He's the Emmy Award-winning investigative reporter, former congressional candidate, now weekday afternoon drive talker at 570 KLIF in the Dallas-Fort Worth market from 3 to 7 local time, Grant Stinchfield. Grant, always a pleasure to have you on the show, and I'll tell you, this is something that has the entire nation watching right now, because here we have a body cam that finally gives us the complete story. This is what we're told. But in your opinion, do we still have the full story to convict Ray Tensing of murder?
No, and you know, this trial really hinges on about 3 seconds of an incident from when he asked him to take off his seatbelt, and then the suspect tries to pull the door shut, start the car, and take off, and the shot fired by the officer. What happens, Ed, is still really up in the air. I'm a big fan of body cams. I think in the end they're going to protect police officers more than they harm them. On the face of this, it doesn't look good, but when you slow this video down frame by frame, I can't tell whether his arm is caught. I can't tell whether the car is even rolling forward, whether it's not rolling forward. All of that is reasonable doubt. It may pose a challenge to actually convict this officer, because in the end, you have to prove that this officer did not fear for his life. They've got to prove that he didn't fear for his life and then willingly pulled the trigger just to kill the guy. And I don't think that's what happened here.
Does this not tell us, though, about what's going on in America, where we have cops of all colors who are almost ready and willing to pull the gun out, to take this action because they fear for their lives? It says something. This was a traffic stop, Grant. You shouldn't have to die for a traffic stop, but the cops just seem to always be thinking, and sometimes correctly, that they don't know what the person in the car has in their hand.
Yeah, Ed, you know, I had the chance to go through an officer-involved shooting simulation, and that was a simulation where I go in on video and there are real characters there. My heart rate went from 65 beats a minute to 152 beats a minute in 2 minutes. That was a fake scenario. Think what this officer was going through. If anything, I think officers are more hesitant now to pull their gun. This officer still did. I don't know what was going through his mind. I think only he knows what was going through his mind, and I'd like to hear more about what this officer has to say before we start labeling him a murderer. It's a troubling video. It is. I'm not going to poo-poo the whole situation. Maybe he is at fault, but I think we need to hear from this officer, too.
Still need to have the judicial system take its course. All right. The other story that I know we're talking about here, I'm sure your audience is and everybody else as well, it is the killing of Cecil the lion in Africa. And to many people, this is just the killing of an animal. But I got to tell you, I'm bleedingly angry about this, and I'm going to comment on it later at the end of the show and telling it like it is, because to me, this is reprehensible. All you're doing is just killing an animal. And this guy says, well, I didn't know what I was doing. Oh, come on. This is ridiculous. And I think this really brings up a good point about what some people do and what they feel they need to do in order to get their jollies.
Yeah, so Ed, I'm not a hunter. My father loves to bird shoot. He would love for me to go with him. I just don't have it in me. I can't do it. That's the soft side of Stinchfield here, right? But I do understand hunting, and I don't necessarily ultimately fault this dentist from Minnesota. I fault the 2 guides. What these 2 guides did is absolutely reprehensible. It is barbaric. But remember, when these hunters from America, most of them are American hunters that go over to Africa, they infuse a tremendous amount of cash into those economies that are struggling.
But wait a minute, Grant, I'm going to go head-to-head again. I'm going to go head-to-head with this one. He's still killing a defenseless animal for no other reason than to go ahead and stick a head on a wall.
He is, Ed, but the problem here is that the government sees fit to give out tags for hunters when they come to Africa. Whether you believe the government or not, that it is to thin the herd and it is conservation, This hunter, I am sure he thought he was buying one of those tags. I don't believe that this hunter actually knew he was shooting a lion that was lured off. I mean, that's bait hunting. It's a bogus way to hunt. I blame the guides. They should be convicted. I think this guy, he goes to Africa. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's an idiot. Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
But I do understand that there is some good that comes out of that for these African countries when people go over there.
I got to tell you, I'm all out of time, but you and I need to have this in a longer discussion because I cannot see the good in something like this when you put the bullet in the head of an innocent creature. But then again, that's the soft side of Berliner now, which we see about once every 497 days. There you go.
I'll make you a deal, Ed. When I'm in Florida, we can talk about it over a beer.
You're on. More than one, I'm sure. Don't forget, 570 KLIF, Dallas-Fort Worth. The afternoon drive. Grant Stinchfield is there. Check your local listings. Be there. And also catch him on the web as well. Grant, always a pleasure. Thanks a lot for joining us. Coming up next, Steve Forbes takes on the Fed and those dastardly Chinese stock markets when we continue right here on The Hard Line.